No one truly respects you. You feel it, even if you don't want to admit it. It's not that people openly look down on you. It's not that they blatantly ignore you. It's worse. They tolerate you. They smile out of politeness. They listen out of obligation. And you, like many, mistake that for respect. But deep down, you know the truth. If you disappeared tomorrow, the world would keep spinning. No pause, no impact. And do you know why? Because you never drew a line. You were never predictable, never a figure of authority. You were accommodating. And in this world, the accommodating bend until they break. The truth is brutal. Respect isn't begged for. It's imposed, not through shouting, not through violence, through presence, through firmness, through a cold, calculated strategy that even Machiavelli would envy. Respect doesn't grow out of kindness or affection. It comes from well-managed fear, from consistency in your decisions, from the brutal clarity of your boundaries. But here's the problem. Most people's boundaries are as blurry as their identity. They contradict themselves. They justify themselves. They bend. And then they cry because no one takes them seriously. Let me say it without sugarcoating. If people don't respect you, it's because they don't fear crossing you. And if they don't fear crossing you, it's because you never made it clear what happens when they do. You're one of those who forgives without consequence, one of those who gives second, third, and fourth chances, until your grace becomes a joke. Machiavelli made it clear. He who wants to be loved and feared at the same time usually ends up being despised. Why? Because he tries to please while imposing rules. And that never works. Respect is born of one thing only: predictability. True authority starts with a rule, the rule of predictable consequences. Not emotional, not impulsive, not rage-driven, predictable, like gravity. If someone crosses you, they should know something will happen. You don't need to shout. You don't need to threaten. You just need to act. Once, twice. That's enough. People learn quickly when consequences are non-negotiable. But you, what do? You forgive with speeches. You punish with sighs. You contradict yourself in the moment. And every time you do, your authority crumbles a little more. Why do you think some people raise their voice and everyone falls silent? Because they never flinch. Because everyone knows that crossing them means there's no way back. But punishment alone is not enough. You also need to master something subtler: the fear of regret. It's not about making others fear you. It's about making them fear disappointing you, so that they know, if they do, you won't yell, you won't humiliate, you won't make a dramatic show, you'll simply remove them. No drama, no explanations, and that silence alone will be enough. The absence of someone who commands respect weighs more than the presence of someone who begs for it. Make your loss something to be feared. Let them know that if they cross the line, you won't destroy them, you'll erase them, as if they never existed. And that hurts far more. But here's what separates a leader from a tyrant: the redemption window. One shot, one chance to make it right. But clear, defined, non-negotiable. People respect those who punish, but they admire those who offer a way back. But just one. Because anything more than that is no longer redemption. It's weakness. Those who fail once and learn become stronger. But those who fail 3 times and remain, they're using you. Give a second chance, but let it be known it's the last. And if they waste it, don't say it. Show it. Respect isn't declared. It's built with actions that leave no room for doubt. This is where most people fail. They punish with anger, reward with guilt, and break their own rules in the name of love, friendship, compassion, or worse, fear of being alone. And do you know what that gets them? Seen as inconsistent, as manipulable, as weak. Because that's what you are when you can't uphold your own decisions, when your grip trembles, when you make exceptions. Authority isn't blind rigidity. It's ruthless consistency. And in a world where most can't even keep a promise to themselves, that's pure power. Look around you. Notice who truly gets respected. It's not the nicest. It's not the most charming. It's the most consistent. The one who acts the same every time. The one who never betrays themselves. People don't respect likability. They respect structure. They feel safe with someone who doesn't change opinions every week, who doesn't forgive today what they condemned yesterday, who doesn't embrace you after they just cast you out. Those people set boundaries, not with words but with actions, because real respect is born when people know exactly what to expect from you and still choose not to cross that line. Respect isn't a feeling, it's a strategy, and you must choose to be liked by everyone or respected by the right ones, because you can't have both. Those who seek approval always end up giving in, and once you give in, you're no longer in charge. The worst thing you can do is trade your principles for acceptance. That's the perfect recipe for being quietly disrespected. They'll tell you they admire you, but they'll use you. They'll say they value you, but they'll walk all over you. Because those who don't command respect always end up becoming a doormat. As simple as that. There's a difference between being feared and being respected. Fear may work for a while, but it's fragile. Respect, when built on consistency, is unbreakable, but it takes cold discipline, the kind that holds the line. Even when it hurts, even when you want to forgive, even when you're alone. Even when you're alone. That's when your true power is measured. When no one is watching and you still do the right thing, not for applause, not for others, but for yourself. Because you know that the moment you betray your own rules, the decline begins. Respect starts when you refuse to betray yourself. Do you know the difference between those who lead and those who obey? Leaders have earned their own respect first, and that's visible, it's felt, it's transmitted, and it draws others in. Because the world doesn't follow the nicest, it follows the most consistent, the one who never hesitates even when everyone else does, the one who punishes with justice, forgives with logic, and never lets cheap emotions decide for them. That person doesn't need to raise their voice, doesn't need attention, because real respect doesn't need an announcement. Here's the hard truth. If people don't respect you, it's not the world's fault. It's yours. You taught them how to treat you. You were flexible when you should have been firm. You stayed quiet when you should have spoken up. You forgave when you should have closed the door. And now you live with the consequences. But here's the good news. You can change it. Not tomorrow. Today. With every decision you make, with every standard you enforce, with every boundary you protect. And you don't need to be cruel, just clear, consistent, firm, relentless. Respect is built like a fortress, stone by stone, decision by decision. It's not quick, it's not easy, but once it's there, it's unshakable. And when you have it, you feel it, in the way people look at you, in the way they speak to you, in how they make sure not to cross the line, because they know you don't bend, you don't forget, you don't give more than someone truly deserves. And that, in a world that's soft and contradictory, is pure gold. Machiavelli wasn't speaking of cruelty, he was speaking of power. And real power is not about dominating others, it's about mastering yourself. Not being a slave to your feelings, not letting guilt or fear pull you off course. Be the marble pillar standing tall in the middle of chaos, the one who brings order in a world of emotional fog. And you don't get that with speeches. You get that with rules, with consequences, with earned, not asked for, respect. Ask yourself this: how predictable are you? Do people know what will happen if they betray you? Or do they still believe you'll forgive everything? Because that's where real respect begins. When they know you so well, they don't even dare to test your line, because they know there's no coming back. And yet, they stay. Because they know if they're in your life, it's worth it. Because you give one chance, and when you do, it's real. Because you punish without hate and forgive without weakness. Because your authority, it's not an act. It's who you are. It's not a role you play. It's an extension of your identity. And here comes the final lesson. Not everyone deserves to be close to you. Respect is also selection. It's knowing who has earned your time, your energy, your trust, and removing without hesitation those who haven't. Not out of pride, but out of self-preservation. Because respect starts with you. And if you don't respect yourself, no one else will. So stop explaining yourself. Stop negotiating your value. Stop being available to people who have proven nothing. Apply the 3 rules: predictable consequences, the fear of disappointing you, and one clear chance at redemption. Then hold the line, no matter who walks away. Because respect isn't about being liked by many. It's about being respected by the right ones. And the right ones always respect those who never betray themselves. Welcome to the real game. Here, the winner isn't the loudest. It's the one who stays grounded the longest. And you get to decide, will you keep being overlooked? Or will you become the kind of authority people would rather not test? Respect isn't requested. It's imposed. And it's imposed in silence. Now comes the part that few have the courage to face. Most people don't lose respect because they're weak. They lose it because they're hungry. Hungry for attention. Hungry for validation. Hungry to be accepted. And in that quiet desperation, they start selling off their power piece by piece. Every time you say, "It's fine," when it clearly isn't, you lose a little. Every time you smile at someone who doesn't deserve it, you lose a little more. Every time you stay silent just to avoid tension, even if it means swallowing your pride, you give something away. And here's the stomach-turning truth. The respect you don't give yourself, others will subtract from you. If you treat your presence like it's cheap, they'll treat it like it's disposable. And the worst part? That hunger for validation is never satisfied. Because every time you trade your power for approval, you end up feeling even worse about yourself. And then you go back for more. It's a cycle, the cycle of the weak, the cycle of those who lose. And it doesn't matter how smart you are, how skilled you are, or how good your intentions may be. If you don't control that hunger, you'll be surrounded by people who don't respect you, because they can smell your need. And here's where Machiavellian truth cuts the deepest. Power doesn't come from how much you depend on others. It comes from how much they depend on you. That kind of power isn't built with arrogance. It's built with value, real value. Knowing when to say no, disappearing when you're not valued, ignoring the message that only arrives when it's convenient for them. Choosing silence over drama. Respect is fueled by detachment. That rare ability to disappear quietly when things go wrong, because the one who can walk away has the power, but the one who stays chasing after others becomes a shadow. And we're not here to be shadows. Let's go even deeper. Why is it so hard to maintain personal authority over time? Why does it feel impossible to uphold standards in a world designed to lower them? Because living with clear rules makes you a threat to those who live with excuses. Because being consistent doesn't just cost energy, it costs relationships. And that's where most people break. They want respect, but they're not willing to lose. They don't realize that earning authority means sacrificing comfort, that the price of being respected is high, but the price of being ignored is devastating. So they fall. Not all at once, not with a scandal. They fall slowly, with tiny concessions, with poorly timed silences, with a quiet, "It's fine, just this once." That's how respect dies. Not with a bang, but with a whisper, with omissions, with decisions disguised as diplomacy, but really, they're fear wrapped in courtesy. Here's another deadly mistake: excessive empathy. Mismanaged empathy is a drug. It destroys your center. It makes you understand everyone, except yourself. It makes you excuse the inexcusable. He had a rough day. She's going through a lot. It's not really their fault. And you? How many times have you used your own story as an excuse to cross someone else's boundaries? Never, right? Because you know what's right doesn't change based on your mood. But for everyone else, you make exceptions. Why? Because deep down, you still haven't fully valued yourself. Respect isn't measured by how well you understand others. It's measured by how firmly you stand in your truth, even when you do understand them. That's the difference between a leader and a martyr. A leader understands, but doesn't betray themselves. A martyr gives everything away, justifies, burns themselves to keep others warm. And here's another overlooked element: body language. No, it's not a cliche, it's pure psychology. The way you walk into a room, the pace of your speech, the silence you hold without panic, the eye contact you don't avoid, even the way you breathe. All of that screams who you are before you say a word. You know who commands respect without speaking? The one who doesn't need to prove anything. The one who sits calmly without urgency. The one who doesn't laugh to fit in. Who doesn't shrink to be liked. Because that sends a silent message. I'm not here to please you. I'm here because I choose to be. And that alone commands respect. True leaders aren't loud. They're dense. Their presence carries weight. Not because they intimidate, but because they don't vibrate with the same social anxiety as everyone else. Because they've made peace with the idea of standing alone if necessary. And that gives them an edge, in any room, in any game, in any war. Now ask yourself this: how many times have you betrayed yourself just to avoid making others uncomfortable? How many times did you fake agreement, swallow your opinion, soften a boundary, just to avoid friction? And what did you gain in return? Nothing. Because people don't respect those who bend. They respect those who stand. And don't confuse this with arrogance. It's not about imposing with noise. It's about being so clear in who you are that others understand you without explanation. It's about treating your principles like anchors, not accessories. About holding your standard even when the whole world decides to lower theirs. And when you do that, something shifts. Not in others, in you. Your energy changes. Your relationships shift. Your time becomes sacred. And you begin to move with different intent. You're no longer available for just any plan, for just any conversation, for just anyone. You become scarce, and scarcity is respected. Always remember that. Respect isn't about controlling others. It's about mastering yourself. Becoming someone so consistent, so clear, so grounded, that the world has no choice but to treat you accordingly. Not because you demand it, but because of who you are. Now the final question. Are you willing to lose whatever it takes to become someone impossible to ignore? Because if you're not, then you're not ready for real respect. You're only ready to keep being part of the noise. And noise eventually fades. Let's dig deeper, because there's more beneath the surface. You know one of the most silent and dangerous ways people lose respect? Over-explaining. That constant need to justify every decision, every boundary, every no period. As if the other person has the right to a full report every time you assert yourself. Why do you do it? Because you're afraid of looking cold, afraid of being judged. But ironically, all it does is weaken your authority. Those who explain too much signal uncertainty. Those who justify too often are silently begging for approval. And respect? Respect is built on what doesn't need to be said. There is power in silence, strength in a simple no, without layers of empathy, without fluff, without explanation. If something no longer serves you, it ends. Period. You owe no one a campaign speech. Think of someone you truly respect. Can you imagine them constantly explaining themselves, trying not to offend, asking permission to hold a standard question mark? Of course not. You respect them because they speak with clarity, because when they say, "This is how it is," you believe them. There's no confusion, no dramatics, no wobble. Here's another modern trap. Digital omnipresence. You're always online, always replying, always reachable. And the worst part? You do it out of fear. Fear that someone might get upset if you don't answer immediately. You've chained your self-worth to your response time. But here's the truth. Being too available makes you predictable. And predictable, when not paired with strength, becomes disposable. People respect what's hard to reach, what's not always present, what doesn't beg for attention. If you're constantly accessible, constantly engaging, constantly proving your worth, you become part of the background. You fade into the wallpaper of everyone else's story. Here's a concept few talk about. Perceived value. This has nothing to do with your talent, intelligence, or kindness. It's about how you manage your scarcity. If you're everywhere, if you have something to say about everything, if you say yes to every plan, your value starts to dissolve. Not because you aren't worthy, but because you no longer stand out. You know who leaves an impact? The one who shows up with precision, who isn't always present, but when they are, the atmosphere changes. The one who disappears for weeks, but when they speak, everyone listens. Because their voice isn't frequent, but it's final. Because their energy isn't given, it's earned. And that brings us to a critical point. Your energy is not unlimited. Most people treat it like it is. They waste it on conversations that go nowhere. They burn it explaining themselves to those who'll never understand. They give it to people who don't know how to receive it. And what happens next? They burn out, they fade, they lose their spark, and people, cruel as it sounds, respect you less when your light dims. Your energy should not be accessible to just anyone. It must be selective, strategic, surgical, and yes, that means disappointing people. It means not replying. It means leaving them on scene. It means being called arrogant, distant, cold. But it also means staying whole. And that is worth more than any label they'll try to throw at you. There's something deeper here. Respect also comes from how you treat your time. Those who respect their own time force the world to respect it too. But the one who always runs late, always delays, always seeing if they can make it, sends a loud message. I don't take myself seriously. And if you aren't punctual with your own priorities, why should anyone else be? Punctuality isn't just arriving on time, it's showing up where you said you'd be. With your body, your habits, your values, your discipline. If you said you'd go to the gym at 7 a.m., but end up on TikTok until 8, what are you showing? Exactly. That even to yourself, you're negotiable. And now we arrive at something even more delicate. Respect dies when you beg for love. Yes, you read that right. Begging for affection is one of the fastest ways to lose authority. You do it when you settle for bare minimums, when you accept affection in halves, when you celebrate crumbs as if they were feasts. The problem isn't that they don't love you how you deserve. The problem is that you accept it anyway, even when it breaks you. Respect begins in how you allow others to love you, in how you define what is acceptable, in how you respond when someone can't meet your standard. And no, this isn't about being demanding out of pride. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to settle for less. Because every time you settle, the world takes notes. And next time, they'll offer you even less. Those who truly command respect know one thing by heart. Love without standards is not love. It's attachment. And attachment doesn't get respected, it gets exploited. Want one more brutal truth? Admiration comes before respect. And no one admires someone who gives themselves away for free. The world respects the ones who hold back, who have the power to act, but choose not to use it recklessly. Who could chase, but choose to observe? Who could beg, but choose to walk away? That level of self-control, it's magnetic. And it's not just philosophy, it's biology. The human brain links strength with leadership. Our limbic system responds more to stability than to desperation. It's that simple. We're animals. And animals follow the one who leads with presence, not the one who pleads to be accepted. So here's the close, at least for now. Your respect doesn't come from your words, your looks, or your achievements. It comes from how you manage conflict, from how you stand still while others flinch, from your ability to say, "This isn't enough for me," even when you desperately want to stay. And if you do it right, you won't need to shout. You won't need to convince. You won't need to fight. People will know from the first second. That is power, and no one can take it from you. Only you can give it away. Will you keep giving it away, or will you, finally, wear your crown in silence? Now we're almost at the end. But this is the moment you need to pay closest attention. Because what you're about to hear isn't a conclusion. It's a door. What no one told you is this: respect isn't something you achieve once and keep forever. It's not a medal. It's not a trophy. It's a daily war. And your greatest enemy is you. Your instinct to fold, your craving to please, your fear of loss, your hunger to be liked. True respect doesn't run on autopilot. It must be defended every day, with every word you choose not to say, with every line you choose to keep, with every person you choose to release. And here's something you need to carve into your mind. People will always treat you how you've taught them to. If you teach weakness, they will use it. If you teach neediness, they will exploit it. But if you teach integrity, if you show that your presence is a privilege, not a given, they will rise to meet your standard, or they will disappear. And if they disappear, good. Because one of the most radical acts of self-respect is learning to be alone, without feeling empty. Being respected isn't about having a crowd cheering you on. It's about having a few who would never dare cross your line. And now, here's the final shift, the most powerful thing you can do. Become the one who never begs to be seen, and yet is impossible to ignore.